Tonight we are excited to welcome our first guest. She is the Director of Operations for Crosswinds Counseling, Rachel Bowers. Rachel, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You are the Director of Operations. You've been with Crosswinds for getting close to 20 years, right?
17.
17. Tell me about what you have seen in this organization. Give us kind of an overview of Crosswinds. I know you were with a different part of the organization prior to about 10 years ago, because that's really when Crosswinds was birthed. Tell me about Crosswinds. Give us an overview and what these last 10 years or so have been like for you.
Yeah, actually I started when we were at Black Lake Lodge, so even before we moved to the residential facility that we now know as PWA. Had the opportunity to work with young boys there, and still probably one of my favorite jobs to this day. I really enjoyed that. It was probably one of the hardest jobs, but I definitely enjoyed that. Moved into Lifeline, I believe it was around 2004. And we were just up in northern Indiana. We had an office for the counseling side right there in Kendallville. I think we had under 20 staff at that point, covering a lot of territory. And then just what has been the most amazing piece of the whole journey is just watching the growth and just watching even our CEO, his vision of what was coming, and just to know that, just to see that in I guess in accordance even with what God has done, and just growing us to where we are today, and just, in every state on the Lifeline side, or every county on the Lifeline side, and just seeing what we've done with Crosswinds and joining that. I guess I joined that team roughly about 5 years ago. And all we were doing is free services, providing free services to people. And just to see now that we've moved to now being able to accept insurance, and that we are throughout the state. We are in other states. We have clients now internationally.
Wow.
In Canada. And it's just been an amazing journey, and it's just been an honor to be a part of it.
That growth is incredible. What's that been like for you to oversee that as the Director of Operations when the operations explode? What is that like in your seat?
I get excited about it. I like the challenge of it. And I think where that excitement comes from, again, is that vision, and just, I believe as a company, now as an enterprise, just how our obedience and yielding to God in the direction that He calls us to go, and how He's calling us to grow. And the fact that being able to witness that firsthand start to play out and take root, and not just move from that vision piece to the reality. And then on top of that, to not only be able to have, again, the honor of just having clinical impact, being able to have kingdom impact as well. And those two marrying together is just, again, adds to that excitement level. And even now thinking of what we're planning even for this year alone, I just get excited, because there's no limit, I believe, to where we will be called to go and grow.
That's amazing. Part of the growth for Crosswinds has been not just helping individuals and families and kids, but getting into the corporate counseling side, which has really exploded. What is that like? What does that program do for those that don't know about the corporate counseling services we provide?
It gives us an opportunity. Life is hard, and balancing life is so hard. And I think especially when, those people, when you look at even just the job market, and the stress of being employed, and just taking on just all that entails in itself. And just to know that we can go in, and companies see the value of mental health, and they're like, you know what? It makes us a better company. I think of one of our corporate counseling partners in particular, our first one. After the first year, they were able to tell us, man, we had a 10% improvement in our retention just by offering your counseling programs, and just being able to be a safe place for, I don't care where you're at in that company. You could be on the ground, you could be in an executive office. We work with all of them. And it's so neat also on our end, because really, if people could realize that the issues that everybody's dealing with are truly the same, they look different, they may manifest differently based on what your role or your title is. But just knowing that, and just to know that we're helping with retention, but even with that, being able to help with the family piece, and when they're going home, and just being a more balanced family, a healthier family because of that.
Tell me about it from the client perspective. You get to see and get to hear feedback and reaction from those that go through our counseling programs and go through sessions. And we are certainly sensitive to privacy, and we adhere to all HIPAA regulations, so we don't share names, and you're not able to give a lot of details at times, but I know that you see the impact and you hear from the client themselves the impact that the counseling has on them. What is some of that feedback, and how does that impact you?
I think the overwhelming, what we hear the most is that they would not have probably gotten therapy had it not been the generosity and benevolence of their employer. And you think, well, if they're employed, surely they would have the financial means to do that, but that's not always the case. I mean, there's other circumstances and things that factor into that. And I just wish companies knew that really it's that simple, it's that basic. It's not like it has to be this grandiose feedback about all this healing that happens, but the fact that, especially with the stigma attached to mental health, that they probably would not have even got help to start with if they didn't have their 3 or their 5 sessions. And the fact that, and even for us, for Crosswinds and Lifeline and Lasting Change, having our own internal corporate counseling, I as an employee, I'm like, that's awesome that my company's willing to invest. It makes me feel better as an employee. That makes me feel more likely to engage. And just, there's so much power, and it's so important, I think, for people to understand that.
That's got to be wonderful to see that feedback, to see that impact. When you hear that, when you see that play out and people's lives get better, how rewarding is that for you? It is, and I want to shout it from the rooftops. I mean, but obviously with HIPAA and even with, there's so many things that in the feedback that clients offer up to us, it identifies can identify who the client is. So we don't get to share a lot of it, but just knowing, and again, just not just the clinical impact, but so much of the feedback we get is kingdom impact. We get to see that maybe their faith has grown, or maybe they're back in church, which is not just from a sense of faith, but as a great community resource as well, and just feeling connected and being part of something more than themselves. It's just awesome. I love it. Real quick, last thing, you hinted at some of the growth, some of the stuff to come in 22. We're here in Indianapolis, and I know you may not be able to give away everything, but what does some of the future plans look like? What do they look like for Indianapolis and other places?
We are looking at adding another 4 offices this year.
Wow.
Greenwood being one of them. So we're still looking at confirming space and just a timeline for that. We're looking at Dayton. We have an office already over there that is really all we're just waiting to hire and get people in there. Kalamazoo, and then we're looking at Kentucky toward the end of the year, the 4th quarter. So
exciting stuff.
It is.
Awesome. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Curtis.
We'll be right back.